or people booed, or only 3 people came, or they felt they were terrible, or others felt they were terrible. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who does anything interesting who doesn't have that experience. And you have to get through that, and you have to keep going, and it's what makes you better at what you do. And that's everyone I know would say that.
Have you had conversations with these folks about any that you can share?
I'm trying to think about, I actually can't think of any, obviously. I'm sure I have, but
the fact that you were confident in being able to say it and feel it, that tells us enough. And I think that there's a takeaway in there, right? Like, yeah. And again, people in the comment section right now it's a great reminder that, oh my God, you mean Grimes had a show that was her first show?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
of course she did. Yeah,
exactly. But that concept is so far removed from our psychology that we've literally forgot it.
Right. And even when we put out our first Grimes record, which was Vision, she was years into her career, and that album did really well, but people thought, oh, she is an overnight success. And she had worked so hard and done so many cool things before we were even involved. She did what she did, and we helped amplify it. And that's, again, people don't always see that part of someone's career, but it's usually there. And, there are very few people who just pop up and are in the right place at the right time. And it does happen, but it's not a good plan.
Have you ever felt pressure? I'm reading a comment right now from Tony Veronica. She's saying, thank you so much for this. We need to stop comparing ourselves. It can quickly turn from inspiring to defeating if you're looking at where someone else is at some juncture in their career. But she continues on here. It's a rather long comment. And ultimately what it comes around to is, what about this concept of settling into a career and to a family relative to your dreams? You've talked about your wife, AJ, and what role has the family or circle of friends played in either promoting, hindering, motivating, decoupling your identity with what role have your friends and family played in your either your success or struggling because you're worried about what they think?
Right. My wife's played a huge role, and she's incredibly talented, smart, ambitious, and around the same time all this was happening, when I was starting to write, not only was she encouraging, but she made this massive career shift where she had a real job, and I think she'd just gotten a raise, and it was the first time in her life when she felt like she could save a little bit of money, and she got interested in money, oddly, for that reason, because she realized that a lot of her friends couldn't give her advice on what to do. And it's a long story. She started this amazing podcast called Money Explained, and one thing led to another, and 2 years later she's a certified financial planner with her own firm with her friend who's a CPA, and they're killing it. And and she just went and did that with no one else pushing her, no one asking her to do it. She quit her job. She did so again, did I gravitate toward her the night that I met her because I saw all of that in her? Probably, in some way. So it goes back to your thing about kind of community and who you spend your time with. I'm kind of forgetting the
it's just is that is a non-traditional, and I'm saying this, I'm checking myself while I'm saying this, relative to the experience that we are conditioned to understand socially and culturally in our country. The fact that at 40-something years of age, you could switch careers or add a new career, maybe is not even switch because you're still an executive at 4AD, and this is a new paradigm. And I'm wondering if you feel resistance to this, or does it feel natural to you? And for anyone, I was wondering if you had some advice for anyone who is feeling that, wait a minute, how do I reinvent myself at 42? It's not just I got kids and responsibilities and a mortgage, and these are stories that we tell ourselves. In part, they might be true, but the hurdles that they're, are they real hurdles? Are they just in our head? What's your philosophy?
I mean, I guess they're both. They're real hurdles and they're in your head. I mean, kids certainly make a difference. I don't have kids, and I don't know if I would have been able to do the things I've done with kids. Kids obviously take time and money, which are two big things. And so it's to go back to the sort of not quitting my job, but rather starting to do things. So yeah, to your point, I haven't had a career shift. To me, I'm still very much a record executive. I have this great job at 4AD. I love it, and that's what I want to continue to do. At the same time, I got to get my feet wet and publish one little thing, and then publish another little thing, and turn it into a bigger thing, all the while working my real job, and then turned it into a book, which, a big publisher's going to publish, which is just crazy to me. It still blows my mind that that's a thing and that someone else read this and decided that was a good idea. The world obviously still has to see it. We'll see. And of course there's still fear of that, but it's the thing I think is it's you don't need to stop what you're doing to do something else. I think that's a huge thing. It might take you a little longer to do the new thing if you're unable to stop, but you don't have to quit your job to start your art practice or your music practice or whatever. You can write music, you can get up an hour earlier every morning, you can stay up late every night, you can spend time on the weekends recording. Music's a harder one, because, well, until now, so much of it required touring, being on the road, especially when you're smaller. It's the best way to build it is to play live. But now suddenly there's a level playing field. So maybe now's a great time if you want to be a musician to figure out, whatever it is, learn the recording program, and you can learn all this stuff online on YouTube and start writing music and start selling it. You could do that. It's,
You're clearly a multi-hyphenate, right? This is a thread that has been very consistent in our conversation over the past hour. I'm curious, how do you describe yourself at parties? What do you do? Hey, Bill, what's up? Good to meet you, man. So what's your gig? What do you do?
Right. I mean, I would generally, depending on the party, I would say I run a record company. That's my general line. And I just put it that. And I'm also, I think I am a bit humble in situations like that and tend to maybe brag less than I even could or should, but I would never say, oh, I run a record company and we're putting out all these great records, and I also just had an article in the New York Times and have a book coming out or whatever. I would never run through the thing. I think I still identify very much as a record company guy.
And is that safe? Why do you do that?
Well, it's true. It's the thing I've done the longest. It's, I guess it's safe, but it can also lead to other things because still most people generally don't know what that is, which is always a surprise to me. It's always like, so you're a record producer. No, I'm not a record producer. Producer is the person who's actually in the studio recording the records, which is not what I do. It always goes. Maybe I should just say I'm a writer. Maybe from this conversation on.
This is why I'm asking.
Right.
And I think it's a conversation that so many of us have in our heads, like, what am I now? And for me, it was the opposite. I started calling myself a photographer before I was legitimately established in that world as almost like a signal to the universe.
Right. That's an important thing to do, though. That makes sense. If you want to get somewhere, then make it happen. That's part of it. Is believing it and putting that out there.
Ash Jensen from Facebook wants to know if you have a few favorite musicians and a few favorite mentors that you respect and or look up to.
In general, let me think. I mean, I'm a huge fan, it's not a musician in particular, but of the band Bad Brains, who is a
legend.
Late 70s, early 80s punk band from Washington, D.C. for black men, which was very interesting at the time, and I guess still is now, oddly. And I think the reason I look up to them, I mean, they're one of my favorite bands of all time, and I love the music, and I love the politics and everything about it, but what's really interesting to me is that I think they did something that I needed at the time. I'm a product of really early MTV, like early 80s, and so I was into Van Halen and Motley Crue, but also the Human League and kind of all the new wave bands that they were playing. And to me, I didn't know I didn't see the line that existed between new wave and metal, which was a thing in the early 80s MTV, because they played those two kinds of music, but to me they just played music.
Mm-hmm.
And Nirvana gets a lot of the credit for fusing different styles, which they absolutely did, and Jane's Addiction before them. But I think Bad Brains was kind of the band, at least for me, that brought together a bunch of different things, and obviously with this huge race element, but kind of showed me that you could mix a bunch of things and bring a bunch of people together musically. So that's my musical one. On a personal, or I guess maybe even business mentor level, I mean, I don't have anybody famous. I had a really amazing internship in college at Polygram Records. There was a woman named Steph who, was a record person in Seattle who I worked for. And she was great in a bunch of ways. I mean, I learned a ton about the record business from her, and that was sort of my first experience there. But she was also just a really good person. And I remember the way she treated people when we went to record stores, and even people who were difficult to deal with. She was great at dealing with them. And I remember one particular thing she told me, because I met so many people in that job. She's like, when someone doesn't understand your name, Nabil, you need to say it again. And you say, hey, I'm Nabil. And if they say, what? You say, Nabil. It's an Arabic name, Nabil. And she's like, then you've said it 3 times. And I remember that line specifically, but that was a really interesting thing that from that day on, I paid a lot more attention to. And it's good to have people like that.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Bad Brains, what was the name of the track that I think the singer, the rumor had it that the singer sang that from prison?
Sacred Love, yeah, I think it's true. It's a really crazy story. He, while they were recording that album, Eye Against Eye, there's a documentary on that album. So the producer, Ron St. Germain, I think they're almost done with the vocals, and he said, yeah, we actually got to get done today because I have to go serve 60 days for a cannabis charge tomorrow. And they're like, what? You didn't tell us this. He's like, yeah. So let's run the vocals now before I have to go. And they got everything done except for that song. And so they figured out a way for him to do it over the payphone from prison. And when you listen to it, you can hear it sounds like, scratchy and different.
Oh, but it's such like that is to me that epitomizes punk and DIY and that ethos of like, no, we're gonna make what would typically be a bug. We're making that a feature. You know what I mean? Like that the through the telephone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you, if you're not familiar with that, you need to go check that out right now. Sacred Love, Bad Brains.
Yeah, pretty incredible story.
Incredible. My man, I keeping you longer than I promised just because I don't want to let you go. We haven't hung out in a long time.
This is great. This has been super fun. We even got rid of the dogs.
I want to spend the last few minutes talking about your upcoming book.
Yeah.
I think the folks who are listening and yours truly are very happily seduced by your writing, your art, the way that you've just built an amazing life arc, and to have that captured in a book that you've written, I hope I'm getting an advance copy. We'll have you back on the show. We're good at moving some units.
It's fun.
But tell us a little bit about the journey of getting a major publisher to write to publish your memoir, and then what can we expect from it?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes along the same path to where I'd published 5 or 6 pieces, and at the same time had tons and tons of writing that hadn't been published. That was lots of personal stuff, and in a way it was very compartmentalized, meaning like I can write all these stories about the bands I was in, I can write all these stories about my childhood, I can write all these stories about race, I can write these stories about the record store, and then I started to realize that there's enough stuff here that I bet I could make it into a memoir, make it into the story of my life, I guess, for lack of a better term, and talk about something. Why would anyone want to read this? I mean, those feelings when you're just doing start to finish your life. But I just decided it was something I needed to do, and I think it was sort of a self-challenge. Like, I wonder if I can do this. I wonder if I can make this into something that feels like it has a story and an arc. I mean, you don't want it to just be like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and the arc is really, plays on kind of the first 10 years of my life, which my mother was on welfare, and she was a single mom the whole time. My father never left us. The agreement was she wanted to get pregnant, and he said, fine, I'm not going to be in the picture. And so it's the opposite of the sad, father left kind of stuff is very deliberate. My mother's incredible. And so that's sort of where it all starts. And yeah, we're on welfare, and I'm a racially mixed kid and all this stuff. And it's all things that you would look at as very difficult and very disadvantageous. But it wasn't. I had this incredible life and really supportive, nurturing people around all the time. And so I guess the big picture is, despite these sort of hurdles, I've had this wonderful life, and here are a bunch of things that have happened during it. And some of them are really funny to me, some are really sad, but it's all part of the whole thing.
Don't stories need conflict?
They do. I mean, I go to jail.
The plot thickens.
It's not. I guess it's not all good, but I guess my point is more that it's not all bad, even though it sounds like it could be.
Thank you so much for being on the show, bud.
It's been a blast.
What do you have a name for your upcoming memoir? Is it
not settled? I can't say it yet because it could change. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll save that for the next one.
All right. Yeah. Well, now we've sufficiently planted the seeds. We've hooked again people. Justin, Ash, Barbie, Peppa, Dusty Craft, Tony, Gervinder, long list of people expressing a lot of gratitude. We got South Africa came back and said, you gave one shout out to South Africa. I want you to know there are two of us on the broadcast. So we got people around the world saying thank you so much for sharing. Sounds like you are a beautiful human, says Ash Jensen.
Wow, Ash. Thanks.
Michelle, Valeria. What's the best place if people want to, read more of your writing, see the bands that you're curating and signing? Give us a couple of coordinates on the internet for we.
Yeah, just my full name, nabilayers.com is my website. That's all the writing stuff, kind of chronologically listed out. 480.
Nabil for those who are listening rather than watching the broadcast right now.
Right.
AYERS.
Yep. And then for 4AD, which is the record company I work for, that's just the number 4, letter A, letter D, as in dog, 4AD.com. And that's, as you mentioned, the National and Grimes and Future Islands and a ton of great bands I'm lucky enough to work with.
Man, I didn't know that you guys did the Pixies reissue, and that, wow.
That was crazy. And so, all those Pixies albums were on 4AD originally, those first five records. And, that's when, I was in high school listening to them. It's crazy.
Yeah. So influential too.
Yeah. So Doolittle, sort of the biggest one, finally, it took forever, but went platinum, 1 million sales in America last year. And it was incredible to be able to, make this platinum record award and actually hand it to the band, who are truly like teenage idols of mine, and it was at Madison Square Garden. I mean, the whole thing was just magical. It was crazy.
This is another look into the inspired and charmed life that you've led. Thanks so much for your time, bud.
Thank you, Chase. It's been great.
I'm grateful to have you on the show. Already looking forward to the next one. Congrats on the book and all the pieces. So inspiring to read what you've written. And thanks for being a good friend.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon in person.
I'm looking forward to it. It's been too long, but signing off for everyone who's watching. Thanks so much for being a part of the show today, for contributing your comments and questions. Very, very thoughtful audience today, and hope you are here with us again soon, maybe even tomorrow.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Chase Jarvis, founder and CEO of Creative Live. You all know that we have more than 2,000 classes and more than 10,000